Hi, it's Kat from Elevate for Self-Love, my channel where we talk about recovering from toxic relationships and regaining self-love and self-esteem. Today's topic is going to be balancing your life between the grief of a breakup and living your life. So you have to have a balance, and I think, you can be on one side or the other more often than another, especially after a breakup. There's just so much pain and grief that you're going to obviously be more on the grief side. However, you have to try to balance that with both. And I think honoring both is important because you don't want to have one without the other. So how are you balancing your life? Like, are you completely consumed by grief? Are you always in bed, home, depressed, feeling like you can't go on after this toxic breakup? Obviously that's problematic. On the flip side, if you're always trying to go out with your friends, constantly keep yourself busy and distracted and be out all the time, that's also bad. So because in that respect, you're not honoring and accepting your real feelings of pain and grief, you're repressing them. And so either of these extremes is not good. And I just wanted to talk about that today to see where you're at. What are you doing? So comment below. Definitely if you're going through this and what do you feel like you're doing more? Are you grieving more and in pain and staying close within yourself and in your home? Or are you going out trying to distract yourself? Or do you feel like you're balanced and actually that's the best way to go? It's straight down the middle, not to either extreme. If you haven't subscribed to my channel though, please subscribe now and press the bell icon so you can get notified of any of my new videos. And if this video resonates with you, please like it and share. So back to the topic, balancing your life, balancing grief and living life. If you're focusing just on your happiness and pretending that you're not in pain, it just doesn't work because you need to validate those feelings of grief and loss. And I think that's something that a lot of people haven't learned how to do. I think growing up, especially in a Western culture, I feel like there's not too much talked about or done to teach people how to deal with grief except with death. And even then it's like we don't talk about it, right? Like death in the Western world is more of like this thing we don't talk about. We ignore it. We fear it. And I think that's an issue because people don't really learn how to grieve. And I think with a toxic breakup, especially, the grief is so deep and it's so strong and you need to like wade through it like you're wading through like quicksand. Like you have to try to get through it. And if no one ever taught you how to grieve or no one ever taught you how to deal with this pain, that can be really hard. So, one thing is recognizing that you have this on your plate and it's something to face, not something to necessarily run from. I think that's important. And, grief has the 5 stages, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So you can cycle through all of those things and you will cycle through them more than once. And you might go to like anger once, then you go to depression, then you go back to anger. So you may experience them more than once. It's not like, you finish this step and then you're done to the next. You will go back sometimes from one step to the other. It's a process that it's hard to know when it's over. It's hard to know when grief is over. And I think it takes a long time, especially with toxic relationships. Unfortunately, we need to spend a lot of time grieving and not judging ourselves for grieving too. Like that's another thing. Like don't be beating yourself up. Like, why is this taking so long for me? And what's wrong with me? And why can't I just get over it? Like my ex just went to the next person. That's most likely because your ex is toxic, and toxic people jump from one person to the next very easily because they never really attach to you on an emotional level like you attach to them. So you can't judge yourself like as if something's wrong with you just because you were attached to them and they never necessarily had a real loving attachment to you. That's why they can move on so quickly. It's because they never had that. So, or if they had that, is like a very different capacity than what you feel. So you cannot like compare yourself and, even people well-meaning friends might say like, oh, just get over it or just move on. You can't really kind of take that into consideration because you went through something very toxic with someone who has issues that affected you. It's not just like a regular breakup. It's just so much more dimensional than that. So I don't know why we don't learn how to grieve like growing up, like why, because in other cultures, like Eastern world cultures, they talk about it more and it's not something to fear or ignore. Like death is part of life, but somehow in the Western world, we don't really learn how to grieve. So nobody really talks about it. I don't know why people don't talk about even the grief of losing relationships and friendships. Like I said, in this culture, it's just very much like the lid is on the top and it's closed and we don't really talk about it. It's like a little taboo to talk about grief and loss. And people just have this mentality like you just have to get over it. You just have to move on and pretend like you didn't even have a loss. And that is so damaging for people that do have losses that affect them, because it is normal to have a loss when you lose a relationship or a friendship. You feel a loss. There's a void. There's something missing. You miss that person. They're gone from your life, and that's real. And it's just as real as if someone died, because now this person who's no longer in your life, it's like a death because that person is no longer in your life. So you have to honor the feelings you have of loss and grief, despite what anyone else says. Honor your own feelings and don't just repress them and pretend they don't exist. Crying and like releasing that pain, that grief, however you need to release it out of your body. And you can research online like ways to release grief, and there's so many different things you can do. Some of those things are in my free downloadable First Critical Steps After a Breakup ebook, and also in the longer course, the Toxic Heartbreak Remedy that I just recently came out with. That goes much more in depth into dealing with your grief and the pain and so forth. So there are a lot of things you can do, but you need to do those things. Honor that grief, honor that pain. Don't push it away. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Because in the end, what happens to a lot of people that do like just push the pain aside and not actually deal with it is that it comes back later to bite you on the ass. And it's even worse the next time because you were repressing it and you just didn't want to face it. So you need to balance though, like you don't want to go into like a depression where you're never getting out of bed and you're just grieving and feeling all of your pain all the time. That's obviously not going to get you to a healing journey. So as time goes on, I think the grief becomes a little less. You start to then live life. So you're trying to balance living life and also grieving. So you need to work on living life little by little. You may, in the beginning, after a breakup, you're going to be completely grieving, probably 24/7. But ultimately, as time goes on, you need to start integrating living life, and then you're balanced. Maybe you're half and half, grief and living life. And then ultimately the grief comes down and the living life will come up. And that's how you will wind up getting healed over time. So just talking about living life in the beginning, when you're grieving, I think living life can just be like enjoying these very basic moments of life. So for me, it's like having a cup of coffee with cream in the morning. It could be enjoying a sunset, or it could be just reading a book on my porch and just having an iced tea in the summer. A cold pool on a hot day for me is really refreshing. And just like I'm enjoying the moment of just being alive, I guess you could say, like just it being present in the moment. Paddleboarding for me, I know some of you know I paddleboard, so that's a big deal. I go out on the lake and I'm out there like just looking at nature. It's so beautiful. I'm out on the water. I love being on the water. And I'm also getting a workout and like exercising, because paddleboarding is a great workout as well. So you need to figure out like what would work for you. Hike in the mountains, maybe. Maybe you want to do like long walks in nature, maybe on a trail. Maybe you want to go to the beach. Maybe you love listening to music. Like that's a big thing for me too. I just put on some of my favorite songs and I dance. And that really helps. Going to the gym. Just all these like small things that you could do for yourself. Maybe you have a protein shake or you have a green shake. You know, like these small things that you are doing for yourself. Another idea is spending time with friends and laughing with friends. You might not want to do that right away after a breakup. You may just not feel like you can laugh. But as you spend more time with friends and supportive people, you know, you will feel like you want to laugh and enjoy life more. Maybe you don't feel overly joyful or happy, but you take these moments of each day to feel this little bit of joy. And that is the balance that over time will lead to you feeling more joy. And you may not get to happiness or this kind of, you know, quote unquote happiness for a long time, but it's that starting out with the balance, and then little by little, this living life in the present moments will outweigh the grief moments. And then that's how you wind up healing ultimately to a place where I feel you have peace. You know, so it's not necessarily about happiness, but it's, to me, more about like peace, more about feeling peace in my heart and just having this peace of mind and like a lack of pain. I guess the lack of pain and the indifference is where you want to strive to. And you just take these little moments. So don't forget to try to appreciate these little moments, because that may be all you're able to really do in the beginning. When you've been crushed by a toxic breakup, I think it takes a long time to get back to yourself and really be happy. So just start out like little by little. Take a break from your grief and enjoy these small moments. Make a list for yourself. Like, what are these small moments that make me feel a bit of joy or contentment or peace? Like, I just listed a couple of things that do that for me. What does it for you? So see if you can make a list of what those things are for you, and see if that helps you to pay attention to when you can make those things happen. And maybe like make a list for yourself. Like this week, I'm going to do this, this, and this, the small things that are going to bring me joy. Maybe it's not a long list. It's just a few things. That's how it starts, so that you can move out of the grief more little by little. I hope this video helped you today. And if you're struggling with balancing your grief and living life, I hope that you'll be able to little by little start to live life and get back to who you used to be, not leaving your grief completely undone and just abandoning it midway before it's processed. So it's like I said, and it's about honoring both pieces of this black and white, the grief and the living life and the joy. It's about honoring both pieces so that you can integrate and process all of that grief in a healthy way. So I hope this video helped you and you enjoyed it. If so, please like and share.